This idea for Sparks of Gratitude has been something that we've been passionate about. We started our podcast about a year ago, but it's been in the making for many years. In fact, it's been more than, I guess, in an intentional practice for about 12 or 14-ish years. My wife and I have intentionally began a gratitude practice in our private life, and from private gratitude journals that we keep ourselves. But what that's blossomed into, it's really changed us from the inside out, where our world around us hasn't changed, but it has, because the person traveling through it has changed.
Welcome to the Kindness Factor podcast, sharing life-changing personal stories of the transformational impact of deep kindness. Hosted by
Dr. Elia, the happiness doctor,
and Randy McNeely, the kindness giver. Thank you for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to another episode of the Kindness Factor podcast. I'm Randy McNeely, known as the kindness giver. I'm joined by my amazing co-host, who is Dr. Elia Gourgouris, the happiness doctor. Where are you coming to us from, Elia?
I'm coming all the way from Greece after spending a wonderful 4 days with you in Palermo, Sicily last week at a beautiful World Kindness Movement General Assembly conference. It was great to see you. Kind of funny, we both live in the United States for the most part, and yet we got to meet in Palermo. So it was a wonderful to see you, my friend. I know you're so just so you guys know, he's been traveling for 48 hours straight. So he's a hero just for showing up.
If I look a little worse for wear, it's only because I'm a little tired, but I'm going to make it. And I can't help but be excited because we have the gratitude man, Mr. Randy Sparks, wonderful, good, kind man in the show, in the room with us. Randy is, golly, how can I even say this? He's passionate about a lot of things. He's got a passion about tennis, and more about watching it than playing, but he loves watching tennis. He travels the world and watches his favorite pro teams compete, which is Rafael Nadal is his favorite. Randy's a married man. He's got 3 beautiful children, and his beautiful wife joins him in promoting what they call the Sparks of Gratitude. He's the host of the Sparks of Gratitude podcast, and his wife and he have chosen a family model, experiences over things. We're going to talk about experiences over things today.
Yes.
Randy, there's a lot more I could say. I want to give you just a minute to tell people a little bit about yourself in addition to what I've said. Tell them a little bit about what you do and why the Sparks of Gratitude.
Well,
and welcome
thank
to the
you.
show,
And
Randy.
yeah, I'm so excited to be here with the two of you, and in part because what you're doing, I think gratitude and kindness really go hand in hand. They are the yin and the yang of this perpetual cycle of moving forward with goodness, and one begets the other, and it just creates this perpetual motion. And so I think this is a really good meeting of concepts of kindness and gratitude. And this idea for Sparks of Gratitude has been something that we've been passionate about. We started our podcast about a year ago, but it's been in the making for many years. In fact, it's been more than, I guess, in an intentional practice for about 12 or 14-ish years. My wife and I have intentionally began a gratitude practice in our private life, and from private gratitude journals that we keep ourselves. But what that's blossomed into, it's really changed us from the inside out, where our world around us hasn't changed, but it has, because the person traveling through it has changed. And this is a continuous process. I still go through hard things. I still have bad attitudes sometimes, which I try to check. But I believe that gratitude has saved me multiple times. And I've seen gratitude do the same for others. And so while I have a day job, I deliver peace of mind to people as a trust and estates attorney. I'm very passionate about promoting the principle and practice of gratitude. And I hope that my podcast, Sparks of Gratitude, if anybody is interested, check it out. can give the gift of gratitude to someone else?
The gifts of gratitude are multiple, as you know. First of all, you cannot be physiologically in a grateful state and be depressed at the same time, because when we're in a grateful state, of course, the greatest drug dealer in the world, the human brain, starts releasing those beautiful chemicals. Um, I have a story I want to share with you about gratitude. Before the pandemic, I used to walk like 3 times a week because I get gray hair. I'm getting older. I got to move. And it was that, and I had to kind of thing. I would do it for an hour. When the pandemic hit and their stress level increased, family, extended family, friends, and clients, and so on, I doubled down on the self-care and I started going on a walk every single day. That goes back to April of 20. So it's been over 4 years now. And I don't miss a day no matter what. In the old days, I used to have my phone with me. Now I leave my phone at home and I go for a walk and I call it my gratitude walk.
Mm.
So for a full hour, I look at the blue skies and I give thanks for that. And I hear the birds. I see the little critters running around, and the ponds and the lakes around where we live and where we hike. And by the time I come home, it's almost like my batteries have been completely supercharged. And I'm not just talking about physically now, I'm talking emotionally and mentally. And I'm ready to take on the day because the tank is full and it's full of gratitude. So I really appreciate what you shared, Randy.
Thank you. I love that story, and I believe it so much. I believe there's so much truth to that experience that you're sharing, because not only stepping out with intention, physical exercise, being grounded in nature and our surroundings, giving ourselves the time to open ourselves up to see what there is to be grateful for, and what wonder the world and the beautiful earth has to provide to us, that raises the frequency. I actually had a guest on my podcast named Christy Holt, who's wonderful. She's really wonderful, and she's been working for years on this idea, and actually has technology that they've developed, and I've been using it for ever since I had her on the podcast, where it will measure the frequency of the vibrations of our voice when we speak into an app, and it informs of our emotions, and it teaches emotional state. And there's every emotion has a frequency. And so I keep thinking of, what are the things I can do to get myself out of a low frequency into a high frequency? And what you've described, you went from a practice to a habit to a lifestyle of your daily walk, and that's increasing your frequency to a high level frequency.
The big difference that before I felt like I had to go for a walk for health reasons or whatever. Now it's because I want to, and I want it every day, and it's a non-negotiable. Like when people say, is self-care kind of selfish? Maybe. Do more,
Uh,
and keep doing it. And gratitude, to me, is at the forefront. Kindness, gratitude, and happiness. Those three things are like the trifecta of and the recipe for a fantastic life.
It's so interesting thinking about what you guys are talking about, because when we take the time, people do say, is self-care selfish? Well, let's think about this. What happens to our health and our well-being if we're not taking care of ourselves, if we're not doing self-care? We all know our bodies, our minds, our hearts, our spirits, that is our production capacity. It's our ability to have an impact. And if we're not taking care of those things, what's going to happen to our production capacity and our ability to have an impact for good on others? We all know the answer. It's going to deteriorate. It's going to go down. So what we're talking about here is being kindness heroes to ourselves in reality, when we take care of ourselves and take the time to do those self-care things.
I think what's unfortunate is that when we're facing a challenge in life, either a personal challenge, financial challenge, a relationship challenge, a health issue, um, that self-care goes out the window for some reason. Our focus shifts. So I got to figure out this crisis. I got to feel the challenge. And the first thing we drop is self-care, rather than, which is the opposite that needs to happen. We need to double down on the self-care in order to overcome the challenge and or crisis in our lives. But it's just human nature to that's the first thing that go, oh, I don't have time for this because I got to deal with something more pressing, more stressful, and so on. And I'm just starting to try to educate people, say, when that happens, be mindful of your circumstances, be mindful of your breathing, be mindful of your thoughts, be mindful of your gratitude, be mindful of those things. because you're going to get out of the challenge of Christ a lot faster if you do. If you neglect your self-care, it's going to last longer. It's going to create more stress, and then it's kind of the snowball effect, of course. So, and Randy Sparks, because there's two Randys here, I have to make sure that I address the right person. I really believe that we're all graduates from the University of Adversity. So the big question is, can we be grateful in the midst of adversity for you? How would you answer that?
Well, I would say absolutely. And I'm going to misquote a lot of people probably during this, but I think the sentiment of what I may share will still follow. One of the things in the last year of the conversations I've had with people on my podcast, I mean, to date, I think I've published 36 or 37 episodes and counting. The through line through all of these episodes, maybe not in the exact words, has been that everybody from artists or professional athletes or authors or scientists or physicians or from every background in life, everybody has a human experience, and they've all been part of this university of adversity, as you describe it. But I've heard some say, in describing it differently, that our life happens and our experiences happen for us, but not to us, right?
Yes.
And there's a huge part of that where it is our attitude stepping into those circumstances, which can be very difficult. You know, I've gone through very challenging circumstances, far less than some. And what I've seen is that people who thrive through those, that attitude, here's what I would point to is Viktor Frankl. I
Yeah.
can't imagine myself going through any experience as horrendous as what he describes in A Man's Search for Meaning. Yet, as I now misquote this, he describes that everything can be taken from us, except for, do any of you know the quote? Except for
Our ability to choose.
our ability to choose our attitude in any given set of circumstances, something on those lines. Well, this is a man who lost his entire family in concentration camps, and he spent his, a good portion of his adult life in a concentration camp. And as a psychologist, he's writing this book looking, well, how does someone find meaning in something so awful? How does someone find beauty and gratitude in something so awful? He didn't say it in so many words, but he did. He even noticed and showed appreciation and gratitude for a flower that he saw blooming in the prison yard. So while the world may be happening around us, I wouldn't argue that these difficult circumstances aren't awful, that we are in fact a victim of some of these circumstances outside of our control in some cases. Sometimes we cause them ourselves and we have ourselves to blame, but sometimes it's out of our control. Yet, what can we look for during those circumstances where we can find that something, that power deep within us to sustain us throughout? I believe that a practice of gratitude can help sustain us through those. And I believe that Viktor Frankl and many others had found a way to see that. So it's definitely possible. In fact, I believe that is the point of our existence, is that we're facing adversity.
When a wallet was returned just moments after it was lost, a purpose was found. This one act of kindness inspired the formation of the nonprofit Kindness Worldwide to create a culture of kindness in communities throughout the world. Kindness Week Worldwide mobilized the entire community in York, Pennsylvania, featuring initiatives and playbook programs including blood drives, kindness cards, K-12 and college students embracing kindness, and an innovative means of community policing, kindness citations. If something so magical can happen in York, Pennsylvania, the same and other inspirations can happen anywhere and everywhere. Our Screen Scenes initiative featuring the Kindness Factor will showcase these many stories of kindness. Let's include your community among them. Kindness is the heartbeat of the world. Together, with your support, we can make all its hearts beat as one.
It's powerful you bring up those stories, because you think of, another example, Nelson Mandela, in prison for, 27 years?
Yeah, I believe it was 27.
27 years. And what he did when he came out, he could have been a very bitter man. But instead, he learned from those experiences, and he used the learning that he gained through those experiences to come out and make a huge impact on his country. I mean, he changed South Africa forever. And you think of another wonderful lady named Corrie ten Boom, who wrote a book called The Hiding Place. And she talks about in that book about fleas and having gratitude for fleas because their barracks was infested with fleas. And you think, good grief, how could you be grateful for fleas? They're getting bit and they're, all of the, but the German soldiers didn't want to come into the barracks because they didn't want to have to deal with the flea infestation. So that kept them from discovering the Bible that they had hidden in the barracks, and that they were able to read and lift each other by reading from the scriptures. She was in the same horrendous, a lot of the same horrendous situation. I mean, she spent years in a concentration camp with her sister. She ended up losing her sister in the concentration camp, and yet they were able to keep up the hope of several of the women that were in their barracks because of the fact that they looked for things to be grateful for. So that's powerful. And there's so many other stories we could tell. And Randy, we're kind of doing this a little bit backwards. We normally start off asking a question about, okay, so tell us about who your kindness hero is. Someone who's been a kindness hero to you, meaning someone who did something for you, and it doesn't have to be anything big, but that left an impact on you, that you had an experience with kindness that touched your heart and inspired you to want to do something because of that experience. Do you have any experiences like that? Any stories you'd like to share?
How much time do you have? I mean, there's two that stand out to me
We've got about
completely.
six minutes.
Okay, well, we'll do this fast. I'll choose one. I will, because my wife is the most wonderful person to walk the earth in my life. I will briefly mention that we've been married for almost 21 years, and the amount of times the amount of forgiveness that exists in our relationship, that is a tremendous act of kindness, that we can see each other and she still looks at me with love in spite of all of the disappointments that I've inflicted upon her during life. Okay. And so I want that to be on top as I describe another one. So when I was deciding, I was 30 years old when I decided to go to law school. So I already had a master's degree in public administration, and I thought I was going to practice in that. And then, and I entered my first job, and within 10 minutes, I just knew, I'm like, this is not my future. But I had this idea that I wanted to be an estate planning attorney. And I told my sister, I'm going to go to law school. And she says, but Randy, you're the nice one. And, I'm one of 8 children, and she's right. I was kind of the peaceful peacemaker, one of all of them. And when I told her I wanted to be an estate planning attorney, and this is why, and she says, oh, well, that makes perfect sense for you. Well, so I did. I went to law school, and this was, in 2006, maybe at the time. And everybody told me, I talked to a lot of estate planning attorneys. They said, Randy, if you do this, go to law school. And then if afterwards you go get a master's of tax law at one of these top 3 schools, you'll be able to write your ticket and work anywhere you want. And that was true in 2006 and 2007. And I started law school then. But during law school, this massive financial crash happened. And there were a lot of people going through law school. In fact, a lot of people lost their jobs, and a lot of people went to law school. So there was this big surge in law students and a dearth of jobs waiting for them exiting law school. So it was actually very difficult. I came out of law school and there were no jobs. Attorneys, law firms had hiring freezes. There was nowhere to go. I did the whole thing. I went to law school for 3 years. Then I got an extra master's of tax law at Georgetown in Washington, D.C. for an extra year. And I thought, well, that'll set me apart. I'll be able to find a job. Nothing. And I was committed to be an estate planning attorney. I did have 1 or 2 opportunities in practicing in different types of law, but they weren't very good. And I was committed to doing this, but there was nothing. There was nowhere to go. And I gave my resume and contacted everybody in the whole state that practiced anything close to it. Well, I got this. Now I'm finally getting to to answer your question. There was this kind man named Wally Bornemeyer who'd never met me, didn't know me from Adam. And he responded to an email I sent to him, and he says, hey, I can't give you a job. But when I was young, like you, there were a lot of people that helped me. And I am happy for you to just come and sit with me and learn what I know. And I will just pay it forward. And so I did. I went up, and a couple times a week, I'd go sit with him in his office and meet with clients with him. And he would just show me the ropes and say, well, yeah, this is how I do it. And I would just learn from him, and he'd help me and let me be an unofficial apprentice, I suppose. But it gave me hope that somebody was kind enough, and he shared forms with me and information with me, and he was kind of a confidant and advisor. And this was for, as I look back in time, this is 15 years ago. I look back, and it was, a short window in my life, but it gave me hope that there's possibility there. It gave me the courage to say, well, I can't find a job anywhere. I'm going to start my own. I didn't know what I was doing, but I said, well, this guy's doing it. Maybe I'll just start my own. And so I started my own firm straight out of law school. And I did that for about a year and a half, until finally someone I knew before said, hey, I need some help. Come join me. And I had a great partner I worked with for 9 years after that. And now I'm at a different firm. But the kindness of somebody for nothing, for no gain other than to pay it forward. He brought me in, and he never had met me before. And I'll never forget that.
That's pretty amazing, actually. Yeah, it's not like a friend or an acquaintance or someone that knew you that pulled you in and took you under his wing. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful story. But it's true what he said, though, and that's what kindness does. You pay it forward all the time. We've all been recipients of multiple acts of kindness from multiple people throughout the years, and you can't help it. It's infectious. You can't help it. Now, we're getting older. I'm mentoring so many other people too, and especially if it's pro bono. To me, there's a huge difference. When I do things, when I don't want any compensation, just do it from the heart. The rewards are. That's why we say with Randy, the other Randy, my partner, that with kindness everybody wins. It's so true. You win, I win, we win. Everybody else wins who's witnessing us, sharing the good vibes and the good, like you're talking about before. So our time is almost over. We want 3 pearls of wisdom from my friend. What are your 3 pearls of wisdom?
I need to say one thing before we jump to the pearls of wisdom.
Sure.
Just
Okay.
the examples from that story. Generational kindness. You think about, he shared with you, I remember when I was young, somebody helped me. And he says, now you're young, and I'm here to help you. Think about that. That's what I call generational kindness. He's thinking about the experience he had. He wanted to pay it forward, and now there's somebody else that's young, and he's going to pay it forward. And I can guarantee you, I can see it in your future, Randy Sparks. If you haven't already done it, you're going to do the same thing for somebody else. It's going to happen. And that is the power of kindness. It drives forward. And why is it so powerful? Because really, in reality, kindness is love in action. He extended love towards you. Somebody extended love toward him. He extended love towards you. And this beautiful thing is you're going to extend that love and caring towards somebody else. All right. Now back to what Elia was saying. We would love to hear 3 little pearls of wisdom from you, Randy, that you could share with our audience, just as quick takeaways.
Okay, pearls of wisdom. Some of these concepts have come up during this. One of them I would say is kindness to yourself. And this is going to cross over to my second pearl of wisdom. They're really the same. But I think you can change a life today, and it won't take you very long. And that is simply
we got to stop with that, because that's anyone can change a life today, and it doesn't cost all that much. Actually, it's so true, and nobody's actually ever shared that on a daily basis we can change somebody's direction forever by doing something beautiful.
Yeah, you can change a life today, and then maybe I'll extend that with the next pearl of wisdom. Maybe I'll have the next pearls of wisdom be, who and how. So you can change a life, and you can change that life today. Number 2 is, how can you do that? Well, it only takes you a moment to think of something sincere and specific. Think of somebody for whom you are grateful, who you appreciate, who's been kind to you, and send them a message right now. Think about it. It takes you only a small moment, but make it sincere and make it specific. and then send them that message. And I would love to hear, put in comments, reach out to Randy and Elia and tell them what kind of responses you get. But you will change somebody's day and possibly their life if you do that. And then the last is self-care. And how would you do that to yourself? And I would say, pause for a moment and look backwards to your prior self, yourself from yesterday, yourself from a year ago or 5 years ago or 10 or 20 years ago. But pause for a moment and give yourself a moment of gratitude for what your younger self has done, the sacrifices that your younger self has made to create who you are right now. You made some decisions, some sacrifices, some mistakes where you've learned something and you've gained from that. Give yourself some appreciation and gratitude and write it down. A letter of gratitude to yourself.
Amen to all of the above. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Randy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We're so privileged to be able to have you on the show. We appreciate our audience. I want to say to the audience, thank you for taking the time to listen, and invite you, as we always do, to take just a couple minutes. Think about what Randy said. Take some time to think about what you've learned, how it's applicable to you, and what you're going to do with that, and go forward and act. And as we always say, before we go anywhere else, got to get this question in. Randy, if people want to connect with you, find your podcast, other things like that, what is the best way to go about doing that?
Okay, thank you. And thank you to everybody. You could be listening to anything, anywhere, and you chose to listen to this. So thank you very much. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, all the podcast platforms. Just look up Sparks of Gratitude and you'll find it. And we've got
a great name, by the way, Sparks of Gratitude. I love that.
Well, I lucked out with my last name there. My last name could have been something else. So thank you to my ancestors.
Well, you put your last name to good use then. That's
Exactly right. Thank you so much, Randy. Thank you, Elia. Thank you to our audience. And remember, with kindness,
everybody wins.
Thank you.